Hello, I'm just putting together a few little videos that I think might be quite informative for people that haven't been tattooed before or are thinking about a new tattoo design, just with regards to the process that we go through, any information I feel that you might need, just to make everything a little bit less scary for people, or just to help you understand our point of view if we are kind of recommending or advising something that you didn't necessarily have in mind, if that makes sense. Our job is to try and meet your expectations as best we can, also bearing in mind the longevity of your tattoo. Our sole kind of purpose as tattoo artists, the craft that we do, like, you know, we learned, is to make sure that your tattoo looks good until you die. That's our main job. We want you to be proud of your tattoo in 30-40 years time. That's kind of the basis of why we will advise and recommend certain things. But I'm just going to talk about a few. So if you're thinking about, if you're putting together a design for a tattoo, if you're thinking about getting tattooed, these might be quite helpful little tips for you. So number one, longevity. There's quite a lot of factors that go into a tattoo to make sure that it lasts a long time. The main thing is actually size. A lot of the time now we get pictures sent from Pinterest and, you know, things that people want, and it will be teeny tiny little really detailed, like flowers or writing or something that's just so small, and they look really cute, like they look really cute. But a lot of the time these pictures aren't of a real tattoo. Sometimes they will actually be a picture of a temporary tattoo. And the problem is, if you go too small with detail, pigment migrates in the skin over time. And what this means is your tattoo looks really sharp and crisp for a little while, and then over time the pigment's kind of spread out a little bit. So if you've got something really small and detailed, chances are you're going to lose that detail over a few years, and the tattoo's just going to become unreadable. It's going to be unreadable anyway, being that small, unless you're stood really close to it. And I always think it's good to have tattoos that people can tell what they are from over the road, so you don't get people kind of staring at you like, but what is it? Because there's nothing worse when you've invested in a tattoo and you've been through the pain to get the tattoo and someone's like, but what is it? It's quite offensive, isn't it? So size, if you're wanting something very detailed, then we will always encourage you to go larger than you may think in your head that you want to go, but it's literally just to make sure that that tattoo holds up over time. Number two is colour, black and grey. Colour and black act quite differently in the skin. So we've talked about the pigment migration, things blur over time. Black has less chance of blurring quite as much as colour because it's made up of a different component. It sits differently in the skin. So for this reason, I would always recommend, if you're having a colour tattoo with no outline, like a colour realism tattoo, you will always need to bear in mind that there will need to be some black in it just to hold the colour in. So for instance, if you're having like red cherry blossoms, like realistic flowers with no outline, it'll look great to start with, but in a couple of years time, from a distance, it may look like you've got a skin condition, which is always my worry. Like, I always worry that, like, you know, it'll look nice now and you'll like it now, but in a few years time it might look like, you know, you've got something kind of going on with your skin. So it's important to have some kind of black, which is why I will always use some kind of outline on my tattoos, or even just really dark shading around like a colour flower if you didn't want an outline, just to make sure that it looks like a flower in years to come. Black and grey, when it comes to black and grey, a lot of people who want to get tattooed aren't sure whether they want it in black and grey or colour. And my point always is, if you go black and grey, you can always add colour at a later date. Whereas if you have colour, you can't then go back to having black and grey. So if you're confused about the two, whether you want it in colour or black and grey, have it done in black and grey, see how you feel about it, and then you can always have colour added when it's healed, is my advice. Another kind of common thing we get asked for is text and pictures. So someone might have a tattoo that represents a loved one that they've lost, or they might have something representing hope or strength or courage, or something really meaningful to you, like something really important. And it's really nice when that message is portrayed with an image. That's what art is. We're using art to express ourselves. Sometimes it doesn't quite make sense then to put the word of what the tattoo is next to it, because it defeats the object of having the image, if that makes sense. So if you've got you know, a phoenix, for instance, which represents fresh start, you know, perseverance, all these kinds of things, I don't feel that you then need to have the word like, you know, fresh start or perseverance next to the phoenix, because the phoenix, that's what it means. And if people out and about don't know what that means, then they'll ask you and you can explain the story of your tattoo. It's quite a nice little process. So don't always feel that you need to label your tattoo with text, even if it's like, you know, I've got a tattoo for my dad who's still around, like, you know, he's not gone, but I didn't feel the need to have dad next to it, because I know that that's for my dad. And things like that. And like my daughter, I've got a tattoo for my daughter, like a little picture, but I haven't got her name next to it, because to me that she knows it's of her, I know it's of her. And sometimes writing with an image is really, really difficult, because it kind of ruins the flow of the design. So you've got something quite static and straight next to something that we've tried to design to fit your body shape, which is another thing to bear in mind. We have to be aware of where a tattoo is going to make sure it fits the body flow, because obviously as we move our bodies, the skin moves and stretches and things change shape. So we want your tattoo to look good whatever position you're in, basically. So that's just something else to bear in mind, and we may advise you on that if we feel it's relevant when you approach us for a new tattoo. Elements of a tattoo is quite a good thing to touch on quickly. A lot of people, and I completely understand why this is, they seem to want 3 million things in one tattoo design. And you know, we've already talked about the importance of size and detail, and you know, we may have to simplify things if they're going too small. I believe that tattoos should be readable. I believe that people should be able to see what they are and tell what they are. If you've got a lot of different elements in a small space, it makes the tattoo quite confusing. Sometimes it can look like someone's just kind of vomited images onto an area. So we may ask you, if you come to us with like a long list of things that you want included in your tattoo that don't relate to each other. It's a bit different if you're having a floral piece and you want all these different types of flowers, that's not a problem. But if you're having you know, a motorbike with a Christmas tree, with a goldfish, we have to try and make that, those things need to interact with each other, and it can be quite difficult. So we may just say to you, why don't you just have the motorbike on that part of your body, have the Christmas tree somewhere else, and the fish somewhere else. Like, I think people forget sometimes that we have whole bodies to work with. Like, you don't have to have everything you ever wanted tattooed in one area. So we may advise you to kind of pick 1 or 2 elements to go into a tattoo design, because again, we have to think about longevity. We have to almost be fortune tellers and kind of think about how you're going to feel about that tattoo in so many years. And it's not to be condescending or patronizing. Like, you know, we're all adults. It's up to you what you do with your body, but just it's our job to make sure that the tattoo it works as a tattoo. Even when it comes to sleeves and half sleeves, it's always good to pick a theme rather than having lots of different. I mean, in certain instances, if you're having traditional style work, having lots of different elements is fine. It's called stamp collecting, but it looks really good with, you know, traditional designs or stand-alone designs. It's fine to have as many as you can fit on an arm. What I would then suggest is, bearing in mind, keep the space in between the tattoos. A lot of people will get kind of different elements, like, you know, a butterfly and something else, and build up a sleeve, which is great. But a lot of people then want the kind of sleeve effect, which is like solid, so they'll want to fill in the gaps, and that's when a sleeve will become confusing and the elements don't stand out. So bear in mind, space is quite important in tattoos as well. Even with floral stuff, like the space in between tattoos is as important as the tattoo itself, which is proven by kind of the black tribal that was really popular a while back. When black tribal was done well, the space and the black were what created the tattoo. It wasn't just the black, and it's the same with Maori. And you know, when we think about where Western tattooing's come from, we've obviously taken elements from lots of different cultures, and it's only really, as far as I'm aware, the Japanese culture that embodied kind of the bodysuit and the full sleeves, and in the way, like, you know, having colour and actual pictures rather than the tribal kind of tattoos. And even when we look at Japanese sleeves, there's only usually one element. It will be a koi or a dragon, or, you know, a bird or something, and then some flowers and background. So even with a full sleeve, it's good to have a theme and then pick a couple, 2 or 3 like main elements, and then just have the rest kind of as background, rather than trying to cram a million different things in, because it can just get really confusing. So it's just something to bear in mind if you're thinking about starting a sleeve or anything. Pick a theme first, and then it will make the whole design process easier, unless you specifically want like different elements, in which case just bear in mind that it might not be the best idea to kind of put a background on it, if that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense. And then the last one is cover-ups. Cover-ups is a subject all unto itself, and I think I will do like a longer version of this. But when you've got a tattoo that needs covering up and it's got black in it, you have to bear in mind that the only thing that will disguise black is black. You can't really put a lighter colour on top of black and expect the original design not to show through, especially if it's writing or, you know, tribal or something. It will always show through. So the only thing we can cover it with is black. Which is why, you know, when you watch tattoo fixers and they end up having like a huge tattoo to cover up a tiny little thing, that's why, because we have to make sure that the area that's being covered up is the darkest area of the tattoo. So for instance, if you've got a name on your wrist and you want flowers to cover it up, what I personally do is whatever's going in a nice bright colour will go away from where the original tattoo was, and then I can use really dark leaves to cover up the name, which then makes the colour stand out more. The more kind of contrast you have between the background and the main piece, the more that tattoo will stand out. And a lot of people, you know, they will want a cover up and they don't want their next tattoo to be any bigger than the original, and unfortunately it's just not possible without laser removal. And also, you know, covering big pieces of tribal and things like that, it's just not possible without laser removal unless you're having like a blacked out arm. And then you can get away with kind of doing white designs on top. It can look quite cool, but it's just something to bear in mind with cover-ups. And I think that's everything. Yeah, if anyone has any questions or anything to add, just let us know. I just want people to feel at ease as possible when coming to us, and I know it can be hard sometimes when you've got your heart set on something and someone like me comes along and says it won't work, like, would you be willing to compromise a little bit on this? And you know, you don't really want to, because you've got an idea in your head and you've seen it on someone else, and but you know, I want everyone to have a nice individual tattoo that's going to look good in 50 years time. Some tattoo artists don't think about that. Some artists aren't even aware of what happens to tattoos over time, because tattooing's so popular now. A lot of people don't worry about the future. They'll tattoo faces, like tiny little really detailed faces, not worrying about what happens years down the line because they've got a good photo of it. So it's just something to bear in mind. Like, I will always have your best interests at heart and compromise with you as much as I can. So I hope that kind of helps. Like I say, if you have any questions, give us a shout, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.